Welcome to The Bouquet Toss, the podcast that helps you plan your wedding day your way. We're your hosts, Sari
and Jessica, and in each episode, we talk with special guests, including wedding professionals, recent brides, and friends, to discuss what to keep and what to toss from your wedding day plans.
This is a Love Stories TV podcast. This episode is brought to you by Generation Tux. Get the perfect suit or tuxedo delivered straight to your door with generationtux.com.
And today we are joined by author Elle Evans.
Today's episode is all about the external pressures and expectations that come with planning a wedding. And Elle happened to just release a very relatable fiction novel.
So relatable.
About these themes. So we're so excited to have you here, Elle.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So before we dive in, we want to ask you a few questions about your wedding.
Of course.
So how long have you been married?
Just over 2 years now.
Okay. And if you had to describe your wedding using only emojis, 5 emojis to describe your wedding.
Okay. Sailboat, lobster,
Ooh.
champagne, waves, bride.
Wow. Okay. That was quick.
That was very quick.
Well, I got married in Maine, so I feel like the lobster and the sailboat and the waves, like that kind of gave me some easy ones.
That sounds dreamy, actually.
Yeah,
Definitely.
we got married in May in Maine, which was sort of rolling the dice, like weather-wise, but we got really lucky. It was like beautiful weather.
Amazing. How many guests did you have?
Like 120, I think, overall.
Nice.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Did you serve lobster?
I wish, a little outside of our price range. But we had some, I'm trying to remember what the seafood was. I know we had seafood. My husband was in charge of all of the food stuff because it was like the one thing he cared a lot about. But yeah, it was amazing.
I love hearing about an involved groom making decisions.
I will say, I would not say that he was involved. I would say that he was involved in the food selections.
Okay. So not a total passenger princess when it comes to wedding planning.
Yeah. Adjacent to a passenger princess, I would say.
So, okay, you wrote a book that is called Wedding Issues. You can actually see it right there. Lord knows we all have them, right? But we want to know, well, we're going to let you give everybody like an actual synopsis of this book, but we also want to know why you wrote it. What was the catalyst for this?
Yeah. So I wrote Wedding Issues in my mid to late 20s when I was living in Nashville. And it was a time in my life that so many of my friends were getting engaged and married. I think I was a bridesmaid like 5 times in 2 years or something like that. And also in that time period, I got engaged and married. So wedding planning was just a huge part of my life for those years. And I was realizing as I was going through this and supporting my friends through it, how many emotions wedding planning stirs up. That's just, I mean, not even just the romance between the people getting married, but just all the family stuff and the friend stuff and sort of the self-discovery through that process. And I thought that would be a really fun backdrop for a book. I also joke that I'm kind of lazy and I don't really like researching. So I knew a lot about wedding planning because I was doing it. So I was like, this is a great thing to write a book about.
I love that. So no spoilers until she gives us the big synopsis. But a lot of this book centers on like the pressures that come with a wedding having like public attention. Wondering if you can talk about how that affected you personally during like your tenure as a bridesmaid and also planning your own wedding?
Sure. So I will say there were no magazine competitions or anything for my wedding or my friend's wedding. So that took some pressure off. But I think, certainly for me and many of my friends, there is an element of, your parents are very involved often. A lot of your parents' friends comes as well. So you're sort of blending different generations, like introducing sides of the family to each other. And so you really want to put on, a good party and a good celebration and really sort of show off to all these different types of people. And it's a lot of opinions and frames of reference to keep in mind and things that your younger friends might like, your parents' generation friends might not like. So it's just a lot of different viewpoints to keep in mind.
So obviously, like those family, friends, generational expectations vary, but also like the social media aspect, I think, plays such a big role, not just on like the characters in your book, but on couples today. So like what was your experience with that?
I definitely got sucked into all of these like sort of made for Instagram type things. I mean, I think there's such a industry around weddings nowadays, and part of it is I think comes from a good place. It wants to celebrate a really, really important moment in your life. But a lot of it is just trying to prey on, I think, brides and grooms' feelings about like, if I don't do all these things, I'm not celebrating this enough. I'm not making it special enough. Like, I remember when I was like super stressed a couple weeks out, my friend who was getting married a couple months after me, she also has a dog, and she had these little like cocktail napkin it's made with her dog's face on it that said like, I do too. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. I wish I had done that. And I was like, looking, can I get this done, in a rush job 2 weeks before the wedding? And I was like, this is a special touch that I didn't think of, and blah, blah, blah. I was like spiraling. It's very close to the wedding. I was
very relatable.
Yes.
I think we've all had a moment like that.
And, I remember I brought it up to my friend sort of a year after her wedding, and I had said that, oh, this is such a nice touch. And she was like, no one has remembered that. I forgot that we did that, all these things. So I think it's really easy, especially with social media, where you see all these beautifully curated tablescapes and everything, to feel that pressure to make every single part of your wedding like photo perfect. And that can cost a lot of money in the long term.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like trying to make your wedding Instagram worthy or wedding blog worthy, like if it's been featured on this website or this Instagram account or whatever. And obviously like the characters in your book had the added level of like vying for, the cover of a magazine on top of it.
Yeah, no, I think just in life in general, there's definitely more of that since Instagram and TikTok and everything. There's more of that pressure to make your life so sort of photo ready and photo worthy.
Yeah.
And the wedding, of course, is already something that you're taking videos of and photos of.
Yep.
It's already like extra pressure on that day. And so I think it's definitely a slippery slope with how far you go with that. And because it's really about you and the person you're marrying at the end of the day. But when you're in that mindset, it's really easy, like me, to have a meltdown about like dog cocktail napkins.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you kind of hinted at this, like you only do it once type of mentality, and like it's the best day of your life mentality, which it was the best day of my life. But like that does, I think, so far, it does like contribute to wanting to, or just even seeing something and being like, oh, I should have done that, or like wanting to get ahead of that and make sure you're including all the details that you want. But I think like the most inherently beautiful thing about weddings is that they keep happening. Like we keep doing them as a society, right? Even though we all know they're very expensive, like, it's something as a culture we can, and not just our culture, like around the world, we're choosing to do this and it's not going away. And so to even dwell on something that you didn't include is like truly a frivolous thing, because there's always going to be something new. Like there's always going to be a trend that pops up. And so really being able to, with your planning, focus in on your values and your priorities so that you can come out of it proud that you did that, and then just admire the really cool things that other people are doing with their weddings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's only been 2 years since I got married, and my sister's getting married in a couple months. And I look at the things that are trendy now, and I look at the different dress styles and this, and I'm like, if I were getting married this year, I probably would have done things differently than I did 2 years ago. And if I got married 5 years from now, I would do things differently than I did when I got married. And that's totally fine. It was the exact wedding that I wanted at that time in my life.
Yeah.
It's so true. And anybody who tells you that like whatever style they're going for is timeless is lying. There's no such thing as timeless. Like trends come and go.
Tell that to all the 80s gowns with like the big sleeves and everything. Sorry,
Mom. As I'm sitting here with like a little bit of like a shoulder pad.
No, that was good.
So we've touched on it a bit, your book. We both read it and loved it. And so we know all the inside secrets. But for our listeners and viewers who haven't gotten a chance to read it, give us your best like 2-sentence, 3-sentence synopsis.
Sure. So Wedding Issues is about a fast-talking law student named Liv, who is maid of honor for 2 weddings that are competing for a bridal magazine cover, her best friend's wedding and her cousin's wedding. And she has a very evil, scheming aunt who's sort of thrown into the mix to try and sabotage everything, a crush on her best friend's brother who's totally off limits, and just a lot of angst about big law in general. So if you wrap all that up, you get a hopefully really fun beach read.
Wow. That was incredible. I mean, you wrote it, so I guess I should expect that. But that was really succinct. Like, that was great.
Thank you.
I'm like, when is it going to be made into a movie? Because I want to see it like play out.
I would love that.
Right?
Several people like I read the reviews. I should not, but I do. And it's like multiple people have written, this would be such a great movie. And I'm like, yes, Netflix, listen to them.
We're manifesting this for you.
Yes.
It was so fun. I honestly mostly listened to audiobooks, but I received the advanced reader's copy and I was super excited to read it. And I literally laid in bed like all day one Saturday and read it. And my partner was like, you must really like that book. And I was like, yeah, it's really good.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. That makes me so happy.
Yeah.
It was a page turner.
There's so many like amazing pop culture references and like truly I think just the relatability of all of it because weddings like are just such a stressful time and it can be not just the two people getting married, but their families and their friends that are involved in everything.
There was layers to this book, honestly. Truly.
Yeah.
Like you add the law stuff, the pressure, the magazine cover of it all, the crazy aunt, which I'm sorry, but like, is there an Aunt Charlotte in your life that this person is
hope
based
not.
off
No.
of?
really
I
hope
get
not.
asked that a lot.
She
But
was evil.
Relentless.
she was so fun to write, though. She was a very, you know how they say, like in Disney movies, the villains always like get the best songs. Like
Definitely.
Scar in The Lion King has a really good song. Like, you know, so I think sometimes the villains are like the most fun scenes and conversations to write. And that's how I definitely felt writing Aunt Charlotte. And everyone has a very strong reaction when we talk about her, which tells me I did my job. You know?
Yeah.
She made people feel something.
I mean, we're not going to give any spoilers, but like the things she does are just unforgivable.
Yeah.
And but I think it would be fun to know when, not if, when this gets made into a movie, who do you want to play Charlotte?
Ooh. Do you guys know the actress from Mad Men, Christina Hendricks? I feel like she would be a really good Aunt Charlotte. You know,
Okay.
like very
Yes.
intimidating, like very feminine, but can get stuff done.
I do think we touched on it a bit, but like the social media of it all is a really big part of it. And I don't want us to sound like, you know, old millennials who are like, oh my God, we're addicted to social media and it's terrible because we all know like there's pros and cons with social media. But I do think that a wedding becomes something that for people who aren't typically sharing their lives every day on social media, their wedding is like a big exception to that. I think they do want to be able to share it. And rightly so. Like, I feel like it was the absolute best day of my life. And I wanted everybody to know about, like, just because I wanted them to experience, like, the absolute, like, happiness that I felt. Like, I definitely made highlight reels on Instagram with, like,
You've got
everybody
content
else's
for days.
posts, right?
Months, years.
Right? But
Plus, you spend so much money on those photos. You want to get
oh, sure.
the mileage out of it,
More
right?
is coming. Like, just wait. Everything is an excuse to post.
When did you get married?
So I got married in March.
Oh, this recently.
year.
Oh, yeah. You got plenty.
Right?
Of
She's got
content
plenty
coming.
of time and license to do so.
And I think, like, yes, obviously social media was a factor for me just in terms of, like, kind of a similar situation with your friend where, like, 2 years later you saw those napkins and you were like, oh, I should have done that. I felt like, you know, hosting a wedding planning podcast, being around this content for so long, working with Budget Savvy Bride, I did feel really prepared. I felt like I had been looking at all the options so much and, like, really, you know, I
You're like, I've been training for this.
Truly.
This is my
Truly.
Super Bowl. I'm ready.
Truly. And, like, I knew all of the, not to say my husband didn't have any say, he did. But, like, I did feel like I got ahead of that where I was, like, really weighing, like, those little details that I wanted. But, like, inevitably, just the other day, I saw somebody post and I was like, oh, should I have done that? And it's like, well, now I can't. But it's like the idea of kind of divorcing what, like, the social media that's for other people and then the social media that's for you. And I think that's, like, a really important part of it and something that the characters in this book come to realize as well. Even though, like, the setup for it, like, they're doing Instagram lives at their, like, pre-wedding events and, like, everything is meant for the publicity that it's going to bring. But then it does end up allowing, and specifically the main character, I wish we could also, like, hear from the two brides, like, what their, you know, thoughts were on it. But it's like sequel. But like, they do kind of realize that in capturing all of that and in making this, like, forward-facing media around their weddings, they actually were able to discover, like, truly what meant most to them, and then also like their relationships benefited from it. Like they came to understand each other better. And I'm curious if that was like an intentional part of writing this for you, and like maybe something you experienced, or
I think when I first started writing this is my first book. So I feel like as a writer in general, I'm still very new to all of this and still really trying to develop my my skills, I guess, especially around character development. I feel like plot comes a lot more naturally to me than character development. So I think I went into this book with a really strong idea of the main character's journey and sort of her arc and the things that she was going to learn and grow and how she would change throughout the book. But I think both of the brides sort of surprised me in terms of the arcs that they ended up developing. And there's an experience as a writer of, for me, I plot out my books. I have broad strokes of the characters, and then I spend hours and hours with these people writing this book. And by the end of the book, I feel like I know them in a way that I didn't when I started. So then sometimes I have to go back and fix dialogue that's like no longer congruous with how they would think. But for both of the brides, as I had that getting to know them process, like they sort of showed me their arcs. And I was like, I think this is like, that was really cool. Where it's like, I felt like I wasn't thinking of it. They were showing it to me.
Planning a wedding can be stressful, but Generation Tux understands. They've designed a suit and tuxedo rental process that you can complete entirely from home. It's easy, affordable, and trusted by wedding couples for over 10 years. Forget about store visits, last-minute pickups, and low-quality, poor-fitting suits. With Generation Tux, you'll choose from over 25 premium suits and tuxedos you can customize with hundreds of accessories and colors. Get free swatches to help with planning a free home try-on for the groom. And everyone in your wedding party gets free shipping and delivery 14 days before your wedding. Visit GenerationTux.com for the perfect suit or tuxedo delivered straight to your door.
I really appreciated sort of the arc and like the change in development, the character development, to your point, of Callie's character throughout, from feeling really like unsure about the attention and not really wanting it to be this big song and dance, but then ultimately sort of feeling, like a trailblazer and, like showing up for a community that she represented because she was a queer woman and growing up in the South. And, I grew up in, outside of Nashville, and I've had, friends go through like similar journeys of like coming out and the pressures in the South and like all of those things. And so I thought that was like a really interesting sort of like perspective. And it was interesting how it made her like shift her thinking of like, okay, well, this isn't just about me and how I feel about it. This is about me being a representative of a community and making a statement. And I thought that there were just so many layers to the book. And I just loved like how that was all woven into the story.
Yeah, no. Thank you for picking up on all that. And that's what I hope readers will get from the book. And I think when I was sort of first drafting the book, I wanted to create two brides who were very different and who had very different sort of journeys and reasons. If these were two generically Southern girls who just wore like slightly different shades of like cowboy boots, this would not be a very interesting book. So I really tried to like sort of create those two very different journeys for the brides.
Yeah, the contrast was definitely there and so great. And it made it just a much richer, like competition and just so layered.
Yeah, and I also think like something that we talk about a lot, and certainly the wedding industry is feeling, is that like queer representation and just like having vendors that are like really attuned to that and is hard to come by, and unfortunately. And so like being able to get the insight from their perspective, but it was never like yes, the idea was that getting representation in specifically this part of the country like was very important so that other young women can feel like they can be that fairy tale bride that they want to be regardless of who they love. But I like that there wasn't a focus on like the struggle of it, and it was more like the honor of it.
Yeah.
I think that's really like it's just such a valuable thing to write.
Yeah. No, and I think I intentionally wrote more of Callie's sort of back and forth with that of, she definitely felt that honor, like you were saying, and also that feeling of, well, your wedding is also something that in some ways is very personal and intimate, and it's also your day. So how do you balance those two things? And you have this opportunity to lead for a community and be that trailblazer, but also you're marrying the woman you love, and maybe you don't want it to be a media circus. So going about
Totally.
Oh, you don't?
I actually really loved, there was a quote, I actually wrote it down because I loved it so much. And it was from her partner, Greta. And she said, "It's our wedding. It's okay to not want so much external pressure on the event. It's okay to focus on what we want, not what everyone else wants."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes, that's what we're talking about, like all the
Yeah.
time with our content.
And
So.
not even just on like the level of having publicity or not, on the level of like the friends and family that you
Oh.
have, like truly that probably is the hardest part of wedding planning is feeling like you have to
Please
everybody.
Yeah.
And at some point, I mean, and in some ways you are. Like if you are choosing to have a big 100+ person wedding and like you are feeding them and supplying them with drinks and entertainment in some ways, like there is, I think, a responsibility, like you're hosting and to be a host, like to take care of them. I think that is part of it. But to let any of like what they expect or like they might comment on affect the decisions that you make. I think it's such a hard thing to deal with, but like staying strong in that is so important.
Yeah, especially if it's something that feels like you're compromising your own values in some way or what truly is important to you. Like it's a hard line to toe and a hard thing to balance. And I think, the characters going through this book, like you got to see that process that they went through and weighing those decisions.
Yeah. Something else that I loved is networking and like the people you know is such a big part of this book. And I don't want to, again, give spoilers, but it's focused kind of in the sense of like getting these amazing like venues for your shower that like are, almost like private celebrity,
Yeah.
And so maybe most of us don't experience that, but the act of using networking or just like tapping into your network for your wedding is so important. And I wrote down a quote as well. It's the valuable network of powerful connections. And I think in the book, like power is kind of, fame and money. But in everyone's life, we have people that can help us with our weddings. And it also makes for a much more of a like community feel for your wedding. But I think like the value of just thinking about like, yeah, I might not have a friend who can get me into this exclusive like club for my shower, but I might have a friend who like knows somebody that owns a restaurant or, really loves to craft and wants to do something for my shower or like anything.
Arrange flowers.
Arrange
or
flower, like, right?
Bake a cake.
Yeah. And, we certainly have talked about this a ton on many episodes, but using your network and like also feeling like people are happy to help you. Like it doesn't have to be an inconvenience. It can be something people are glad to do for you, I think is like a really important way to go about planning.
For sure. I think it really depends on, everyone's personal situations and the relationships that they have with their people, Some people might not have that sort of like community or like village around them to jump in and help. And I think people who do and are able to leverage that to help them save money especially is so great. And they're so lucky not just to have that support like emotionally, but also like logistically and stuff too, financially. And for people who don't necessarily have like an immediate group of people in their local area, we are in such like a social first community age now. We can leverage social media to crowdsource feedback. You can join local bride Facebook groups and, borrow and barter or buy things from previous brides. So, I mean, even if you don't personally have that community around you, you can find ways to create that for yourself online.
Yeah. Another thing in the book that I really loved is there's a ton of just like fun pop culture references, like Housewives, Taylor Swift.
Yes, I was keeping tally of the number of Swiftie references. Are you?
There
are
are
you
a lot.
Swiftie?
I am.
Okay, we've been wanting to ask somebody this. If you had to describe your wedding as one of the Taylor Swift eras,
Oh,
which would it be?
that's such a good question. Not Tortured Poets. Don't worry, Alan. That's my husband. I feel like it's cliche, but I would say Lover. That era.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lover vibes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a vibe.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know as much about it.
I'm the
but-
resident Swiftie.
Oh, got it.
But yeah, I think if any bride is getting married, wouldn't you want it to be your Lover era?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Fearless.
Fearless.
That's a good one too.
Fearless is a good one, I think, too. It's much more happy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this has been so fun. And before we wrap up, we want to play a little game with you because the bouquet toss is all about helping couples decide what to keep and what to toss from their wedding day plans.
Okay.
So we're going to play a game called Keep It or Toss It.
Sounds good.
And there's a little paddle underneath your seat.
okay.
Sari's going to play along with you this time. All right.
Oh, yep. Okay.
And so for the folks listening, we need to say your answer out loud, but then
Okay.
also hold up the paddle for the folks watching on screen. So, okay. So we're going to go through a list of sort of rapid fire questions that are different wedding ideas, and you have to decide whether to keep them or toss them. So are we ready?
We're ready.
Ready.
Ready, ladies. Okay. So TikTok dances with your bridesmaids.
Keep.
Wow. Okay. We have differing
Tossing
opinions.
that.
Let's hear why.
I will say, so I did not do any dances because I feel like not that I'm really on TikTok now, I mostly see what comes over to Instagram, but they look really fun. And although they're very cheesy and dated usually to like a specific month or summer or year, they just look fun and it would be something to like look back on.
Wait, now I feel bad. And I do think that's a good thing. And if you can find time in your day
Sure.
to do it, because like when it's very hard to schedule anything in a wedding day besides pictures, but do it for the memories for sure. Just don't do it for the gram or the
Yes.
top.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Do it for the top.
With the hope of going viral or
Right.
whatever. All right. Okay. So along those same lines, doing it for the gram in general.
Toss.
Pasta.
Duh. Okay. Live streaming your wedding ceremony for the public.
Toss.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who would watch it though, who I didn't invite, I guess. I mean,
right.
maybe for guests who couldn't come for logistics reasons or something if they wanted to watch. But I'm like, we're not celebrities. I don't think anyone
Right.
else would
Having like
watch
a
it.
Zoom link or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do also feel like I was so excited for like our community to hear our vows.
Oh my gosh.
Aw.
Like, and yes,
They
I
were
You
beautiful.
wrote your
Thank
own
you.
vows? So-
Yes.
Oh.
I was crying. I was like videoing it because I was
The
DIY
camera's like shaking
videographer
or
on the day of.
something.
Yeah.
You hear
Totally.
sniffles in the
like-
background.
So beautiful. Okay. So next one is hiring a wedding content creator.
Toss.
You're like, did you know that was a thing?
No, I did not.
Oh.
I'm kind of keeping and tossing.
Oh.
I'm keeping because you did it for me.
Yeah. Free labor.
Free labor. But also
So hiring for free, you're keeping.
no.
The savvy
More
one.
more so that I had a pro who knew like all of the things I would want captured, but none of it was like content and
None
the
of it
like
was staged or
capital
organized
C
or
content.
directed.
Right. None of it was like creating
Mhm.
it was for me. It was for me to have it. So like yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So next up is wedding hashtags.
Ooh, toss.
Toss.
Yeah, those are sorry folks.
Yeah.
Those are a thing of the past.
The typical Nashville bachelorette party.
Oh, you got to keep it. I will say, so I lived in Nashville for 5 years, and I lived right like 2 streets over from Music Row, which
Oh my
is like
goodness.
Midtown, and the not the honky tonks, what are they called? The pedal taverns would
Yes.
go rolling by like every day as I'm walking my dog, and there'd be these like really drunk, happy girls, and I would be like, "Yep, have fun." But it was just so fun, and everyone has such a good time. And
Yeah.
it's just a very different experience. And one of the best parts about living in Nashville was that it was so easy to get people to come visit you because everyone loves Nashville.
That's
And
a
so I think
great city.
it's just a very fun and distinct flavor of bachelorette.
Yes, for sure.
That's true. I think being a native New Yorker, I'm a little bit removed from that. And to me, like people doing that, I'm like, you're trying to be like you're from Nashville. When
Is it
you're-
cultural appropriation?
right? It's like it's not a big deal. Sorry, it's fine.
We did say that anyone who wants to go to Broadway, like the main strip, is definitely a tourist. Like
Right.
after we'd been living there for like 6 months and we switched to going to different bars, we're like, okay, like now we're sort of from
It's
Nashville.
like going to Times Square in New York City.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, do you have to have like your like the cowboy hat and the cowboy boots? Like,
I
is
will
that
say
part-
I only just bought cowboy boots because of this book and there's boots on the cover. So I wore them to a lot of my author events. But before that, I lived in Nashville for 5 years, but I was like, I can't get cowboy boots. I'm a poser. Like I'm not from the South. I don't ride horses. I can't do it. And then I wrote this book and I was like, all right, I'm doing it. And then
You know
everyone
what?
loved the boots.
Yeah, I would say like our message to anyone: get the boots. You deserve the
Yeah,
boots.
wear the cowboy boots.
Yeah. And for anybody who maybe isn't familiar with what is the typical or stereotypical Nashville bachelorette party, it typically involves girls dressing up in, matching tank tops, cowboy boots, maybe blue jean skirts, cowgirl hats. There's pedal taverns that are literally like man-powered bicycles where there's a bartender in the middle, like giving you shots like while you ride around downtown.
Yeah, and they've also evolved, and there's tractors now too that ride around downtown, so you can drink on a tractor. Really,
Wow.
anything Southern you can drink on.
It's wild to me, and it's like become even more so than like almost like on par with Mardi Gras in New Orleans or like Las Vegas, and it is the real like bachelorette destination. And it's so funny because I grew up not far from Nashville, around 30 minutes south of Nashville, and yeah, it's completely blown up in a way that I didn't expect.
I think it's like the second or third bachelorette destination in the country now.
Yeah.
Everyone called it like Nash Vegas.
Well, that's
Nash
right.
Vegas.
Yeah.
It's Nash Vegas. It's like getting rid of Vegas, go to Nashville. Yeah, for sure.
It's probably more budget savvy, to be honest. Although the hotels in Nashville, I've actually heard, are more expensive than New York City.
They are not cheap.
Yeah. So maybe not so savvy. Okay, so next one on our list is Wedding Spawn Con. So like getting a sponsor for your wedding and having to do some product placement or whatever as part of your wedding.
Ooh, I'm keeping it.
I was gonna say, if I can save money and I'll use your brand of wine or something, sure.
Yeah.
Right.
I
No
agree.
one would sponsor me, but if they did.
If it helps pad that budget, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then finally, other people's opinions.
Toss.
Toss.
Unless it's, the person I'm marrying or, my mom or like the close family, all the disclaimers. But most people's opinions, no. Toss.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, we can't make it sound easier than it is. Like, it is, you're going to get opinions no matter what. And so I also do think, like, the idea is to hear them and maybe consider them just in order to understand maybe like what needs your guest might have, right? But if it's something that is truly like not affecting them and is preference, then the opinion can walk out the door.
Yeah. And I think too, everyone can relate to having like the family and friends opinions, and those actually matter. Those people you love and care about, and you want to, please them to a certain degree without sacrificing your own values, of course. But like, just thank heavens that you don't have like the public voting on your every wedding move, like the characters.
That is a lot of pressure.
So
Yeah. So speaking of, tell everybody where they can find more about the book, about you, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a very poorly maintained website, www.levansbooks.com. So you can look there, but I would recommend just following me on Instagram, l.evans.books. And then you can buy wedding issues at Barnes & Noble, on Amazon, and at a lot of independent bookstores too. So
Amazing.
shop small
Love
if
'em.
you can.
Shop small, absolutely.
Yes, and be sure to pack it for your beach vacations this summer. It is a page turner, and you won't be able to put it down.
Perfect for wedding season.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to meet you in person.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thanks for tuning in to The Bouquet Toss by the team at thebudgetsavvybride.com.
The Bouquet Toss is part of the Love Stories TV podcast network.
Your support for the show makes it all possible, so please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform, and follow Budget Savvy Bride on social media. As always, stay savvy and stay tuned for our next episode. This episode is brought to you by Generation Tux. Get the perfect suit or tuxedo delivered straight to your door with GenerationTux.com.